Linebackers review of the offensive line. Basically, all the film reviews you could possibly ask for. Let's talk some Chiefs, guys. Welcome to the Chief of the North here on RGR Football. A day late and a dollar short, perhaps, but President's Day for government workers such as myself is a holiday, and so I'm coming to you on a Tuesday, oddly enough, here on RGR Football to talk about, as we do every week, some of the main storylines that I think exist in Chiefs Kingdom. Of course, the current best storyline is the Chiefs are champions of the world. Super Bowl champions for the second time in 4 years. Life is good, man. It is I've been saying it for years. It's a great time to be a Chiefs fan. It's a great day to be a Chiefs fan, week, month, year, decade. And it's been awesome. And so that's never been truer than it is right now. There's so much to talk about still. It's interesting how quickly the news cycle starts to move forward in sports. And it has to, right? Because only one team wins it all. And so you got to figure out a way to keep fans of the other 31 teams interested. And so you move on, right? You move on to, free agency, especially to the draft, to various team building things, because 31 other teams, their season ended badly. Their season ended with a loss. Whereas, or they ended with a win, but it didn't matter because they didn't make the playoffs. But you get what I mean. It either ended without making the playoffs or in a loss. There, that's better. And so I get it. The clock moves on, and soon we shall too, to talk about the next phase of things with the Chiefs. I'm going to be continuing to look back for a little while longer. I've got maybe one film review left of me at the Super Bowl, maybe talk about a few unsung heroes. And then I want to talk about, as I do every year, the best moments of the Chiefs season. And I really would love to write an article about Brett Veach and some of the things he's done over the last couple of years that have led to multiple Super Bowl titles. It's been almost indescribably awesome. It's almost impossible to really, when you take a look at what Veach has done. And some of the things people can talk about, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, who are obviously those two along with Patrick Mahomes. Those are the foundation of these two Super Bowl wins. Those are your three main guys. And, Veach was not the GM when those guys were drafted. It's very, very true. However, this Super Bowl win was much more Veach's stamp on it than John Dorsey's. Now, Veach had done a few really impressive things in terms of like revamping the defense and stuff like that. But this was this Super Bowl win, and a lot of the guys who contributed, this was Veach's baby. One of the things that I wrote about following the game was the offensive line essentially dominating the game in a way that people weren't really expecting. That's something you can check out. It's up on the Chief of the North newsletter. People talked about it. They pitched a shutout. They allowed no sacks. What I did is this is such a gorgeously blocked run. Isn't it just fun to watch? What I did is I went back and I reviewed every offensive line snap, and I wrote about how many snaps they actually allowed pressure, how many successful runs they had, which is partly due to Isaiah Pacheco, but also a function of the blocking, largely a function of the blocking. That's going to be generally the most important thing when you look at any play. An example here with Pacheco is while he does make a nice little inside cut there, picks the right hole to go through, runs explosively, finishes strong. It's the blocking here. Like this is one that you should take for a big gain. And they just crushed it throughout the game. And that's one of the things that I went back and wrote about, how they helped the offensive line, how it resulted in some of the big plays that you saw, but how the line, even when you were just sitting there with, 5 blockers against 4 defenders, the mismatch is what I call it, how they held their own. So that's just one example of something that I've really been looking at in terms of how Brett Veach kind of put his stamp on this Super Bowl. So I want to write about that today. There's just a couple things that I want to talk about. I want to talk about the linebackers, and I want to talk about Patrick Mahomes. And so let's do it in reverse order, because you got to say Patrick Mahomes for last, because I think people are underselling just how brilliant he was in the Super Bowl now that I've looked at the film. So that's something that's really interesting to look at when you go back, because the base stats, the counting sets are not that high because he didn't have a lot of snaps because of the way the game went. And so it's really easy to say, oh, he didn't even have 200 yards passing. That's weird. But he couldn't be stopped the entire game. And there's reasons for that. But first, I do want to talk just a little bit about the linebackers, who arguably maybe had the best game of any defensive position in the Super Bowl, any defensive group that is. And it was a big reason why the Chiefs were able to compete with the Eagles. So we're going to talk about those two things again in reverse order. We're going to talk about the linebackers first. The first thing to do before you do any of that, hey, hit subscribe, hit like, hit all those buttons that you're supposed to on YouTube. Support Ryan, RJR Football, the good work that these guys do here. They do an awesome job. Ryan puts a ton of work into it. There's just no one else in our field like Ryan. He's just completely and totally self-made. I got my start on SB Nation. I needed that platform to help boost me for years and years and years before I started a Substack, and that was after The Athletic. And everyone else has some sort of similar story, whereas Ryan, he's just made it happen, Captain, and that's awesome for him. So let's talk about linebackers. Now, just worth noting, this is something that you can find on the Chief of the North newsletter. It's one of the first things that I wrote about, sort of, in terms of film review type stuff. I wrote about, as you can see here, how the Chiefs linebackers made life tough on Philadelphia. And as I say here, when you went into the Super Bowl, there were two major storylines. First was the offensive line. The second was the Chiefs linebackers against the Eagles rushing attack. And frankly, I was one of those people that said that's going to be one of the defining battles of the game. Because if the Eagles had been able to run the ball successfully on early downs and consistently put themselves in 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3 type situations, it would have been even harder for the Chiefs defense to collect any stops or control any aspect of the game. And you would have seen an even more extreme version of some of the ball control stuff the Eagles did. The reason the Eagles were able to control the ball was in part because Jalen Hurts played a really great game, and he converted on multiple 3rd and longs. Well, why were they in 3rd and long? Part of that is the work that the linebacker group was doing. And because the linebacker group did such a good job against the run game, particularly Willie Gay Jr. and Nick Bolton, it forced the Eagles outside of their normal plan of attack. And so what I did in this piece is I wrote about Nick Bolton, who you'll see here, sniffing out a quarterback keeper. You love the awareness here. And you see how Willie Gay Jr. stays disciplined. He doesn't get himself sucked too far inside, which would allow Hurts to kind of try to break the edge here. But I love what Bolton does here. He just patient, go. Making sure he kept the ball, recognizing that it's going to be a QB keeper, and stuffing him behind the line. You had a few plays like that from Bolton. He had an opportunity to show off his intelligence, his ability to read plays, his ability to make important plays. And everyone's going to remember the scoop and score. Obviously, that was a game-swinging play. That wasn't Nick Bolton, in my opinion, best play of the game. In part because, he didn't really force the fumble. He did a great job being in the right position, which was great. He would have stuffed the play. But the fumble itself, Jalen Hurts just dropped it. The ball bounced right up to him. Great for him being in the right spot. That is a good play. But it's not a great play because some of it was luck. And you might think, well, Seth, why are you knocking Nick Bolton? I'm actually not. I just want people to recognize what I think was one of his actual best plays of the game. And you know what? I don't mind showing you guys. It's behind the paywall, but what do I care? On 3rd and 11, with the Chiefs losing 21-24. So this is after they'd first scored coming out of the first half. They needed to hold the Eagles to a field goal to keep themselves within a single score. And on 3rd and 11, what you have here is Nick Bolton, and you're going to see it run through multiple times. Hey, Mills, sorry, man. You're going to see it run through multiple times here on the screen. If you watch how Nick Bolton plays this, you've got crossers coming through. Well, not necessarily crossers, but you've got guys, we'll describe it as a form of a pick play. And you notice it's Goddard and A.J. Brown. And the design here is trying to draw Nick Bolton away from this crosser to where you end up with a corner versus a guy with a head of steam making it to the sideline in order to pick up yardage. And it doesn't work. It only gains a few yards. This play is designed to pick up somewhere between 8 to 12 yards, maybe pick up the first down or put them in a position to go for it. But it doesn't, because Bolton doesn't let himself get caught up in the muck. He trusts his guys passing off in terms of, he trusts Willie Gay. He trusts the other underneath defenders. And he continues to close on this crossing route here. And he makes sure that he's in position as soon as the ball is snapped. He has nowhere to go. It's stuffed. The Eagles are forced to kick a field goal instead of collecting maybe a touchdown. That was, I think, probably his best play of the game. and it was outside of his normal comfort zone. It's outside of an area that he's always been successful. It impressed me so much. Willie Gay Jr. was one of the best defensive players on the field for the Chiefs on the Super Bowl. I can't say enough about him. Everyone probably noticed the fact that his blitz on Jalen Hurts to force a throwaway. It displayed his athleticism and displayed one of the most he's so difficult to beat. And Jalen Hurts is normally able to spin away and buy some time and make throws down the field, even when he loses on a blitz, even when the guy's a free runner. We've seen him do that. Willie Gay Jr. was too athletic. But even beyond that, one of my favorite snaps of the game, Colin Saunders' sack. What a great job closing here. But watch what Willie Gay Jr. does in coverage here. He ends up alone against Devonta Smith and stays with him on an island. Hurts is thinking as he scrambles, he's got a one-on-one matchup that he likes here as the corner has to go back and account for the other receiver, which is Brown. So they're bracketing him up here. He thinks that he's going to have a matchup he likes. So he'll roll that way and make the throw. And Willie Gay Jr. never provides an opening. Colin Saunders closes faster than he realized that he could. And you know the rest. You should check out that article. The linebackers, Willie Gay Jr. especially, and Nick Bolton especially. Leo Chanel contributed in a few snaps in kind of a really downhill role, which suits him really well. But those two were absolutely vital to the victory. Man, I enjoy talking ball so much that I feel like I'm almost out of time, but we need to talk about Patrick Mahomes. So I wrote about him, the Super Bowl film review, no mistakes. And that describes his game against the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Sorry, I just got a message here at work. He made no mistakes. And that's such a difficult thing to do as you try to play a good game against a great team, a great defense that's bringing the heat, that's playing discipline, all those things. What Patrick Mahomes needed to do is make no mistakes and still move the ball. And he did all of those things. Now, so this article is unlocked for anyone to review. I just want to point out a couple things that Mahomes did in this game to try to help the offensive line deal with the pressure that exists. And basically, the main thing that he did was he made decisions quickly. The first play that I talked about here in this article is just a simple pitch and catch to Travis Kelce. But of course, as you know, dear reader, dear listener, watcher, it's not quite that simple. And so what you have here, yes, he makes the throw before Kelce's fully open. He's throwing to a spot. He's got to put enough heat on the ball to get it underneath where Kelce is. That way the safety can't come down and recover, even though he'd slipped a little bit. The placement's unbelievable. The accuracy, the heat on the ball, all of that. One thing you don't know about prior to this snap is that Kelce had actually motioned from left to right prior to the play starting. And what the Eagles did is they had someone follow him left to right or right to left from their point of view, making it look like they were playing man coverage. Well, as you can see here, once the ball is snapped, they're not playing man coverage. They're playing an iteration of zone. And what they're trying to do there is mess with Patrick Mahomes' reads pre and post snap to make him make mistakes. All day, Mahomes dealt with stuff like that. He dealt with it quickly, immediately, made the right reads, right throw, basically every single play. Everything was accurate. Everything was on time. Every decision was fast. That's how he helped the offensive line, by making fast decisions, the ball constantly getting out in under 3 seconds. And the few times that he didn't, he maybe ran around, bought a little bit of time in a limited capacity with that ankle. It's so hard to ask a player to win in multiple ways. And this is one of the things that I wrote about here. And again, this article, by the way, you should really go read it, the Chief of North newsletter. You know, you can just go to mnchiefsfan.substack.com, something like that. MinnesotaChiefsFan.substack.com. This one's unlocked for anyone to review or to read. Check it out. I think you'll really enjoy it. One of the main points that I was trying to make in the article, and I kind of hit it time again, I give a lot of examples of plays like that, is that Mahomes was asked to be kind of a game manager extraordinaire against an elite defense. And that's the sort of game that people like to try to claim he can't do because he's too busy creating. He's too busy going off script, all of this stuff. Most quarterbacks, virtually all quarterbacks, really, they have certain ways that they win. And they have certain high-level traits And that's what they do. Whether you're a guy who reads the defense really well pre-snap or who sees the game pretty slowly post-snap, as in the game slows down for you post-snap, so you're able to read how the coverages change over time. Maybe you're a really accurate thrower. Maybe you've got just a hose for an arm so you can fit the ball into tight windows. Maybe you're a really creative player. Maybe you're one who knows the scheme inside and out, so you're able to make a bunch of pre-snap calls and alter your protections and do all those things. Or in the case of Mahomes, maybe you can do all of it. And what I call him in the article is a shapeshifter. He can win any way against any defense operating in any type of capacity. You need a game manager extraordinaire, he can do that. You need a guy who's constantly creating yards, he can do that. And he had to do both against the Eagles because even though he was game managing at an incredibly high level, the vast majority of the game, there were multiple times where he had to make plays happen out of thin air. And I mean, there's multiple plays where you have that. One of my very favorites, and it's one that I'm sure most of you remember, where he gets out of a sack. He finds Travis Kelce for a first down. Now, this was a drive in which they needed to score a touchdown. This is their first drive coming out of the second half. This is a sack. This play is over. He's got no right to create these yards. And I think it went down as 12 created yards or something like that. Here's where this type of play is so vital. You see where he's about to get brought down here. For the vast majority of quarterbacks in the NFL, this is a sack and a 4-ish yard loss, give or take. Then what people tend to forget, it's not just about those yards. It's about what that does to you situationally. And what that does is it puts you at 2nd and 14. Well, duh, Seth. Yes. Obvious passing downs where a pass rush like the Eagles can just absolutely tee off on you. They can do more exotic things with blitzes. You're forced to hold the ball longer because you got longer developing routes. Your play sheet is minimalized because you only have so many calls for 2nd and 14 or 3rd and 10, whatever that turns into. By creating yards out of thin air, he didn't just create those 12 yards that they gained. He also avoided losing 4 yards, 5 yards. So there's an extra 4 or 5 yards, maybe it's 15, 16 yards, but he also kept the chains moving and completely altered the situation that they were in. And that right there is even more valuable than the yards themselves because it allows the offense to stay ahead of schedule. No surprise, they scored a touchdown on that drive. Mahomes was absolutely brilliant. You know what? As I say these things, we're just going to watch him scramble. This was the play that really won the game for the Chiefs. The Eagles, they know they need to stop here. There's like 4 minutes left to go in the game, a little bit less actually. They know they need to stop the Chiefs from getting into field goal range. On first down, what do? They go to their bread and butter. They rush 5 guys because that's what they've done all year. Not 5 guys in terms of blitzing, but as in you run some iteration of a bear front with 5 defensive linemen, and you rush all 5 of them, knowing that one of your guys is going to win, and also knowing that forces the Chiefs to keep a couple players like Pacheco. And then when you'll see from the other side when it resets itself, Travis Kelce, it forces them to chip on their way out and slows down their routes. So you can, in a way, slow down the offense. The big thing for them is they planted man coverage across the board, and they bet, hey, if we halo Kelce, no one else is going to beat us in man coverage. Here's the problem. You can't rush 5 guys and try to have extra attention paid to Travis Kelce and still have a spy on Mahomes. And he was waiting for this moment, and he picked it perfectly. And the Chiefs' win percentage opportunity went from, I think I included in the article, it went it went up to like a little over 80%. It was the largest, it increased the win probability by like 12 or 13% when he made that scramble. It was a terrific play that really demonstrated the overall point of all of this in terms of the Eagles' options in the Super Bowl. They didn't have any. They tried to find answers for Mahomes, and they couldn't because he was so good against zone. They'd actually just completed a couple passes in a row against zone prior to this with Juju Smith-Schuster and then Travis Kelce moving the chains. They couldn't play zone because the Chiefs were too good against it. But you play man, you run the risk of not getting pressure home unless you rush that extra guy, but then you don't have a spot. You see, there's just no good answer for Patrick Mahomes when he's playing at this level because he's a shapeshifter. There is no you can't make him play left-handed. And even if you do, he might just throw the ball left-handed. But you can't take away the thing that he does at an elite level because any decision you make as a defensive coordinator, what that does is you can't, you can't have 14 defenders on the field. Any decision you make is going to naturally lean towards a little something. If you really try to take away a quarterback's ability to make pre-snap reads, all of that motion and all of that activity makes you just a step slower post-snap because guys got to run and sprint to get into position. It also takes away from your ability to try to dominate individual matchups. You can try to turn him into a playmaker by trying to force quick pressure and take away his guys. You can try to force him to be a pocket passer by rushing 4, rushing 3, and dropping a bunch of guys. With Mahomes, he's great at it all. There really is no weakness there for any team to pick on. And that is, you'll hear things about how well Jalen Hurts played versus Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts was absolutely excellent. But he made some mistakes. Now, obviously, he had one that was absolutely critical, which that alone, that's a whole game's worth of mistakes when you give up 6 points on one, which is unfortunate because he played a terrific game. Mahomes also played a terrific game that was essentially mistake-free, which is incredibly difficult to do. On the biggest stage, under the brightest lights, against the best defense he'd faced all year, Mahomes played in a way that he's not supposed to be able to play and answered every single question that anyone could possibly still have about him. And that is my big story for the week. And so I hope you check that out on the Chief of the North newsletter. There's a lot more plays and examples of it, some of the stats that I throw out there and that I chart when I look at every snap. It was a lot of fun to watch. It's a lot of fun to be a Chiefs fan. I'll be seeing you guys soon here again this week. I appreciate you watching as ever. This has been such a fun year. Thanks again, guys.